Well, thanks again for the opportunity. First, we'll talk about our organizational structure. We have 3 divisions: operations, fire safety, and training. Operations responsible for personnel, the staffing, of course, of the fire engines and trucks. All our station houses and our other buildings, we're responsible for 15 structures in town here. The equipment, supplies, and of course the data analysis, is how we drive our businesses through analyzing data. Fire safety, they're community risk experts. Inspections, investigations, public education, emergency planning, and they coordinate a lot of activities that Division 1 does. Then we have the training division. Chief Marfeld is next to me, and I apologize, I'd like to start a little bit here. This is Reginald, he is our fiscal officer. This is Chief Bob Marfeld, Division Chief of Training. Behind me is Deputy Chief Jeff Bassett. He's in Division 1 Operations. Next to him is Chief Buddy Neighbors, who's in Operations. And not forgetting, this is Chief Chris Richmond, our Fire Marshal, and the Division Chief of Fire Safety. I apologize for not starting that way, if you didn't know them already. Training division, we'll get back to it. They're responsible for scheduling and make sure we maintain all our training and the documents that fall with that training, certificates that go with it. Let's get to the corporate fund. We're same as every year. 94% is personal services. 6% over there is operating lines. It's nothing new for us. Then let's dig into the operating lines. We've got our overhead costs. Those are no different than the costs you have at your home, your mortgage, your phone bill, your insurance, your utilities, all those different things. Those are the costs we have on running our department on a day-to-day basis. Fleet costs are set by OBM. That's after the combined garage that maintains our fire trucks and cars. What we have left, $88,000, a very small chunk of those operating lines. Basically, that's just if we need to replace a computer, some office supplies, or some of the big ones, house repairs, and the supplies for those houses. Take a look at the budget by cost center. I think you can see it, that we have been on a flat budget. This is the 3rd year in a row. The only increase really up there is the personal services. That we've been out of contract for 2 years, so there's basically 3 years worth of salary in there, the raises. See, equipment, we've dropped down 36,000. The automotive, we've went up 17,000. That was set by OBM. I think the note is the most important thing that you'll find on that page. If we take the personal services out, we're 2.26% down. We've cut everything we can, ladies and gentlemen. This just reiterates what we have. Our personal service growth, 2.1 million. As you can see what it contains. Contractual increase. That is the consolidation of the fiscal officers. Equipment decrease, 36,000. We did buy some bottles last year that are needed. And our automotive increase of 17. That was set by OBM for the combined fleet. Our workforce. As you can see, it's going to decrease. It's a odd number. Shows us being at 214 sworn on June 1st. We have 9 cadets in class right now. They're in the middle of their training. Our training is 6 months long. If they were to be cut March 1st, we'd cut them off in the middle of their training, and basically we'd have to restart some of their training for them to be able to come back to shift. Our civilians have stayed the same. We've added another minority with our hires. We continually reach about 10%. We've been successful on our recruiting over this last testing cycle. We just can't seem to get them all the way here. A few facts about us, just to make sure everybody knows the correct numbers. Who do we protect? City of Springfield. 9 fire protection districts. We have contracts with the Illinois State Fairgrounds and the University of Illinois. What that equals to is about 140,000 people. That's who we protect with an EAV of 2.9 billion. 124 square miles is what we cover.
Can you tell us what the EAV stands for?
Estimated assessed value.
Thank you.
If we compare it to two of our comparable fire departments, which are Peoria, they cover 50.23 square miles, 166,000 population with an EAV of 1.9. Rockford, 61 square miles, 150,000 population with an EAV of 2.1. As you can see, we cover a large area, which is extremely difficult for a fire department. I'll reiterate, I'm the same way as Chief Winslow is. We have volunteer departments around us, but we don't have any. The mutual aid, Chatham is the only professional department, but we struggle with mutual aid to help us out. I always like to give you guys kind of a year-end statement of what we've done during this point. We had 232 structure fires, 541 total fire calls. That was up. False alarms were down. EMS is up. Hazmat, mutual aid, other calls. 18,491. We had 17,761 last year. We're up by 4.8%. Yes, Alderman.
On the false alarms, I know we've talked about this over the years. But do we have any frequent flyers on that where it's
we monitor that.
consistently being a false alarm?
The false alarm, I mean, it's kind of a, I shouldn't say it's the right statement, but we call them false alarms, but most of the time, the alarm functions as it should. It's set off by something. It causes the system to go into alarm, and we respond to the call. Either dust, smoke, burnt food, burnt popcorn, those different things. I mean, we're talking about, those false alarms have to do with businesses that we protect that have alarm systems. Most of the time, those alarms are set off by some outside thing. Occurrence, exactly, and they work as they should.
So it's not.
Again, could we hold all of our questions till the full presentation's been made? Continue, Chief, please.
In the 232 structure fires, we had 191 residential fires. Last year, we had 187. I always like to give you guys this also. This is your wards. This is calls for service in your individual wards. Had a decrease in Ward 7 and 5. All the rest of the wards increased in their call volume. And these are the fire protection districts that we have here. Curran is out at the town of Curran in that western area. East side is Grandview and some of that Sangamon County unincorporated city. North side, as it says. South Lawn is Lake Town. Woodside is Jerome. South Oak Knolls is Leland Grove. Those villages and towns that are inside. And western is just that western developed area to the west there, as it says. Those villages and towns that are within us. Historical structure fires. I know we're always under the gun about how many fires we go on and its fire calls. And what you'll see, that's a 19-year average, that line. I wish it was less. This property is still being destroyed. It's the #1 cause of property damage in the world besides natural occurrences. As you can see, we had a big run there in 2007, 8, 9, kind of in those areas. 12 is an outlier, and we all know what happened in those years. An economic decline, people, if they can't pay for their building, they have a tendency to burn it down. Historical EMS data. As you can see, constantly climbing. Aging baby boomers we have in our community. System abuse, which we try to stay, we do the best we can with that. The opioid epidemic. We've seen it in our stuff. We administered 129 doses of Narcan in 2017, 124 in 16. We have not seen a huge upswing in the opioid. But remember, this year is one of the first years that PD is also administering it. You can buy it at Walgreens without a prescription. They're giving it out at different places in town. So we've not really climbed, but I'm sure it has climbed in our community. I'll show you some of what we do. This is Division 1. This is the guys on the trucks, okay? This is their public education and interactions. 69 times we had rig reviews, station house tours, fire safety drills, school visits, adopt a school program. It's a great thing we started 4 or 5 years ago. Each company adopts a grade school, make 4 visits a year to them. One of them is the fire drill, of course, and the other 3 we try to read to the kids, show them the fire truck, and talk about fire safety. And smoke alarm installations. Those are see a need, fill a need, and people can call our fire safety division, schedule appointments on Wednesday night from 7 to 9, Saturday, I think 9 to 11. All these items right here, our interactions, are scheduled by our training division and our fire safety division. Division 2, fire safety. Building inspections, 3,000. We should be doing 5,000. Code violations, 969. That's up 80 from the year before. Plan review, 516. That's up 82. Within that, there was 44 regional plan reviews. We're not getting any funds for doing those reviews. Investigations, 121. Within those investigations, we had 7 arson-related arrests. We had 7 of those, 5 adults and 2 juveniles in there. Our fire prevention officer, 100 events he had throughout the year, different schools and businesses. They were also responsible for a lot of the coordination in the old Pillsbury over there in that remediation. Here's an interesting fact. Non-code versus code. On the left, 1 to 2 family dwelling, same house you live in probably. We don't tell you to have a smoke detector. We don't tell you to be fire safe. We don't inspect you. When you have a fire there, we're going to save about 64% of your house. Sad but true. When you have those systems, when we get to inspect you, we make you have smoke detectors, make sure your alarm system work, whether your sprinklers work, all those fire safety things that go along with that in your structure, 97.3% of those structures we save. Division 3 workload. That's our training division. See that. Hazmat team training, 960 hours. Rescue team training, 1,400 hours. Special teams, ITTF classes, that goes along with that, 1,004 hours. Rookie training, 2016 class that we graduated early of last year, I should say, and the class we have going right now with nine cadets in it. They're responsible for all that training. We don't send our recruits out. We train them ourselves in our own academy. The ongoing training for all divisions, 57,000 hours. Grand total, 69,000 hours. They're responsible for documenting all that. Apparatus. These are a couple slides here that'll go along with the handout that I gave you. Green line is where we'd like to be, 15 years front line. That is not a short period of time for other departments, believe me. A lot of them replace at 10. We're looking at 15. The dark line above that, 20 year. That's when we would like to be able to keep a rig 5 years after it is retired from front line. NFPA will tell you at 25 years you should be decommissioning your fire trucks. We have 3 of our spare engines that are 24 years right now. Understand that these are getting used on a daily basis, sometimes weeks at a time, when our frontline stuff is down for repairs and/or maintenance. They're used all the time. There's the points. They go along with the handout I gave you. Please take a look at that and how those points were assigned to those apparatus. Now we get on the good stuff. EMS response. We know it's 59% of our calls. Look at that. We got even faster this year, 603 compared to 631 in 2016. The guys and gals are working extremely hard. We even made the ambulance up the ante on that. We're still beating them by almost 3 minutes. This goes along to the great work we've done with the ILS and the pit crew CPR when we can increase our saves by 600% in this community. The average is about 2 people a year had a cardiac event and lived to tell about it and walked out of the hospital. We've got 13 this year. 13 of those people. I just received a letter today about a guy showing up at Station 10 to thank our crew because he had a major heart attack in the parking lot at Schnucks off Sangamon. Coded 3 times, came by Station 10 to thank our guys 2 days ago. The next great thing. Class 1. It is true. We're top 0.5% of all fire departments that are graded in the country. 46,000. We're in that thing. Was it a combined effort? Absolutely. We had the lion's share of it. Came with our water department and 911 communications. We improved our score. And this was all fire suppression. This is how fast we show up, how well we're trained. And a lot of this, a huge part of it was our bonus points, which was our community risk reduction. What we're doing for the public to make them safer. Our smoke detector installations, our investigations, our inspections, all those things are combined in that. If you look back at the ISO presentation that I gave you guys, you'll see all those things and how much they mattered. Our accomplishments. Well, we brought 3 more engines into the ILS. We had 6 the year before, we had 9 this year. Made a difference. Pit crew CPR, drug administration protocols for ILS care. We're giving the original heart drugs, the initial heart drugs that are saving these people's life. And that's why we're up 600%. You look around the country, anybody that's installed the pit crew CPR, which is a great thing, they're getting about 300% gains on their cardiac saves. We're at 600. We graduated 10 kids this year. Doing well. We increased our eyes to keep our program going. We think it's extremely worthwhile for this community when you see gains like we have. It's making a difference in people's families. And we replaced the HVAC system at number 1. Major priorities. We'd like to keep expanding this. We will if we can get our recruits through and keep our manning. Get all 12 engines, and then we're spread across the town where we need to be. Who knows where we'll be next year? Better yet, I hope. More people. Complete the contract negotiations. Been a long haul. I wish we'd get there. We need to install that EVP system. We need to get that off our backs. Get the Southwest Corridor taken care of. Down in your neck of the woods there, Ralph.
Thank you.
You know, I'd like to see it expand. We need to coordinate our plan review. We need to get a little more streamlined how we do things on this plan review. We want to continue our public education, the smoke detector program. It's fantastic. We've been in thousands of houses, installed thousands of these smoke detectors. I got a letter from a crew. They installed a CO detector 2 weeks ago. People's home. They go to the call 2 days ago. It's going off. 70 parts per million in their basement and climbing. We get them out. Odorless, colorless gas that kills you. Our future hurdles. They're needs, but they're hurdles. We have to do something about our frontline apparatus. It's old. Look at the packet I gave you. Defibrillator replacement. It's our heart starts. It's what we use. We're contacted by Philips. We use Philips. We're contacted from them about, how long ago was it, Jeff?
9 months.
9 months ago. All of a sudden we get a letter in the mail that says, guess what? Recall by FDA, end-of-life product. You can't upgrade anything. We'll try to supply you parts for 5 years. Guy came by and tried to upgrade one of them. That was 4 months ago. It's been gone. We've been waiting on a screen for 4 or 5 months. I don't think they're not taking care of them. We're going to work on a grant. We have to get it in within the next couple weeks. It's $700,000 worth for the fire department. All of them. That's what it costs to replace them. Station 6 relocation. We're hampered. We're going to be hampered by being cut off at the end there by this underpass. We've looked at places. We think we've got a place for it that works. But it's money. We need the storage, too. It's going to solve a lot of problems for us if we can build a new firehouse on the south side there. SCBA replacement. That's the packs we wear on our backs to keep us alive in fires. They're multiple years behind the NFPA standard. We looked at that. That was going to be another one of our grant options until they moved it off priority to, what's it called, Bob? Secondary, intermediate? There's no chance of us getting it on grant money. The federal government has reduced that grant value year after year. We need to do something eventually with them. Expand the EVP system citywide. I think it's a solution for us. I think it's a solution for our outside part of the city. How do we get there?
What's the EVP, Coach? Chief?
Emergency vehicle preemption.
Thank you.
We need to expand that. I mean, our city is growing out. It's not growing in. Our firehouses sit where the bulk of their calls lie. A lot cheaper to fix the traffic lights than move firehouses, and I'm not sure if moving firehouses would be the best solution anyway. It costs a lot of money, and now we're moving a farther distance away from the bulk of our calls. Response time is everything in our business. Paging system. How we get our pages out from 911. 15 years old. I mean, the rumor is we've got one spare piece, and that's sitting at the airport, and if we want to get it worked on, we got to fly a guy in from Israel, to be honest. I mean, that's where we're at with this. 300,000. Support vehicles. That's the stuff that we drive. It's all 12, 13 years old. We're still driving it. We're all right. That's why it's on the bottom. You've got it all from me. What kind of questions can I answer for you now?
Alderman Donlin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your time this evening. I do, just as a point of clarification, I want to make sure, because I didn't hear you say it, but I understand that this budget does not include a new fire engine. Is that correct?
Does not, as far as I know.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is when we get to the OBM section and we go over Fund 94, Fund 94 is equipment, right? Fund 94, I'd like to have a breakdown. I guess I'm directing this towards the budget stuff. I'd like to have a breakdown of the equipment that is being proposed to purchase. When's the last time we got a new fire engine?
Brand new one?
Yeah.
What was it, 15?
It was 15 when we actually took possession.
15 when we took possession. We ordered it in 14.
We haven't had a new fire engine since FY15, and I know you did some creative things, and we got some retro or some refurbished.
We bought a refurb out of Nevada.
And how long ago has that been?
Was it last year, buddy? Year and a half ago.
Okay, a year and a half ago. So needless to say, we're in great need, and the unfortunate part is they're expensive.
Absolutely.
I know I'm stating the obvious, but when we get to the Fund 94 and 5 discussions, in particular equipment and infrastructure, on the equipment side, I'd like to take a look at that and make sure that see if there's any way possible that we can address those concerns. It is something that on my prior tenure at the city, when I first came in, we hadn't purchased some equipment in a while. We worked on that hard, and we were able to do so. We did some creative things, and maybe there's a way again, Chief. It's something that I feel for you, and I feel for the guys and gals that are out there constantly having to use, I'm being facetious, but duct tape and masking tape to keep these things together.
Thank you, Alderman. We are spending a disproportionate amount of money on apparatus that is probably not worth it.
Chief, I got a few more questions, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
On, I'll say, page 2 of our packet, which is, I believe, slide 4, you showed fleet cost of $980, almost $1 million, 41% of your budget. Has that, and I know we made some changes a few years ago with consolidation of the garages, has that number gone up or down for the department over the?
It stayed relatively the same. This year it went up to 17,000. I'd have to look back at the previous budget years. I think we started 979, dropped down for a couple of years, and now it's gone back up to what we paid the fleet garage.
Thank you for that clarification. I see on page 3 of the packet, you mentioned that, I just want to make sure I understand this because I don't now. It says fiscal officer, an increase of $81,000. Now, you still have the same fiscal officer, correct?
That is correct.
What happened? What's going on here? How come it's
He's
increasing?
going to get moved under OBM, and we're going to pay his salary and benefits.
So I guess the question overall, the impact on the city overall, does that change? Is that zero? Okay.
He's out of the 1,100 lines and moved to the 1,200.
He moved out of our, yes, that's correct. He moved out of our 1,100 lines of personnel and moved to the 1,200 lines as a contractual.
You didn't talk about this tonight, but in the information, the summary of the budget that I got from the budget director, Mr. McCarty, I think if I read it correctly, it said that in fire safety, there's three positions that are being eliminated, and in training, 1. Is that correct?
That's what I've been told.
Can someone address that? What's going on here? I don't know if it's
Yeah,
the chief
that's,
or budget director.
Director McCarty will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think according to the contract, you can't necessarily cut positions. You just don't fund the department to a certain level, and that's what we did. And that'll impact 3 inspectors, and I think 1 battalion chief vacancy.
So the 3.
Is that correct, Director McCarty?
Yes, that's essentially correct. Those positions that you're referring to have not been funded in the budget, and those individuals, the mayor wishes for them to be reassigned to Division 1.
Okay, so we're not talking about a layoff, but we are talking about essentially taking people out of those positions. Somebody told me recently, and I was on my car on the phone, and we're talking about, it was right after these announcements were made publicly. They said that by statute, we can't remove fire safety inspectors that are sworn officers and put civilians in those positions by statute. Is that correct? I mean, I guess, Mr. Zirkle, I don't know if this question is for you or Mr. McCarty, but I'm looking at you, Mr.
Well, that's what
McCarty.
we're not doing this year, but we'll take a look at it.
Right. But I mean, by statute, at least some, I don't know if it's right or not, wrong, but I've been told by statute we couldn't like take 3 inspectors out of fire safety that, wear badges and put civilians in there by statute because we have people in there that have badges, so to speak. or sworn
It's
officers.
a substitution rule. It's in the state statutes. It said if a duty is performed by a sworn member, it can't be replaced. I mean, a person cannot come in and do it temporarily or permanently.
Okay, so that is correct. So that rumor was correct. And I think that's a key point because I hear it all the time from constituents or people that when they talk about the fire department, they bring up that we have firefighters that wear badges that are out inspecting. Why can't we have civilians doing that? And I guess the answer is that because of decisions made decades ago, that and probably some changes in the at the legislature, that we're not able to do that. Now, whether we can eliminate the positions via budget cuts or not, it's a whole different question, and we'll talk about a different day. But I just wanted some clarification there. I guess one of the final points I wanted just some clarification when you're going through the process here. Another thing that comes up, and I've heard it at the Citizens Club, and I've heard it at other community. I think I've even seen an article recently in the Illinois Times about the fire department in general, and about there's a belief out there that when they compare Springfield to other communities such as Peoria and Rockford and Decatur and Bloomington Normal, that we have more firefighters. And I always see that population of 117,000, and then it makes me think, and I'm glad you put it in your slide, that it's not 117,000, which is the municipality proper. That's the population of Springfield. It's 140,000 because we, the City of Springfield Fire Department, cover these 9 fire protection districts outside of the city boundaries. Now, we have agreements. We're compensated, and I'm glad we are. It would be nice if they would always contribute more, but that's, again, a discussion for a different day. But, Chief, I think with the amount of resources you're provided, the number of firefighters, and considering those extra 9 districts that we cover, I think you do a lot with a little. And that's just a statement. You don't have to respond to it, and I want to, but you're certainly always welcome to. Then finally, I find it interesting, another thing that comes up, people talk about the number of actual fire calls that the fire department gets as compared to EMS calls. And they say, Jim, I had somebody recently say this, Jim, why can't we just let the ambulances do the EMS calls? And, you basically, my answer to that is going to be, because of your slide, 6 minutes. And that's what your slide said. It said ambulances can get there 6 minutes later. And if for example, it was a heart-related issue, that could be the difference. Is that a fair statement?
That's exactly the truth. That's exactly the truth. Those 3 minutes are the difference makers. That's the difference. You get to 9 to 10 minutes, I mean, you're done. I don't know how to say it any other way. You got a very small window there. And that's why we only had 2 saves in previous years. We didn't have the tech, we weren't doing the work. We weren't capable of doing the work, and we saw the need for it. And that's why we moved to these initiatives of the ILS and the pit crew CPR especially has been a big gain. We saw the need for that. And the 2 people that were getting saved, it just had to be absolutely perfect. Somebody had to see them, somebody had to be close. I mean, just a lot of things had to line up. They had to be healthy, a lot of different things for them to make it.
Chief, when you give the acronym, please tell, for people at home, tell us.
Intermediate life support, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then finally, just one comment. I want to thank Chief Richmond. We didn't do anything. We didn't do it this year, but the year before we did a great number of in Ward 9 and some of the older areas. We did the CO and smoke detector programs, and I think it was an average of about 85% plus of the doors we knocked on. Some of them had smoke detectors that had been there since the early 80s, and most of them were out of date, and Springfield's safer because of that program. Thank you.
Absolutely. We saw it in our data this year, and I kind of went by it, is we always look at our data every year of the fires that we have and the smoke, if they have installed smoke detectors. This year, 72% of those fires had a smoke detector. Last year, it was 53%. The 5-year average has been about 62%. So we're seeing a difference.
And thanks to the American Red Cross to help supply the smoke detectors, I believe.
Right.
Great partnership.
Alderman Hanauer, then Alderman Redpath, then Alderman Tyler.
Thank you. Chief, we do the fire protection districts. Are we getting paid the proper amounts for the work that we're doing there? For instance, and I know it's a tough thing, but we got to recover our cost on that. I mean, our taxpayers are paying in, and we don't want. I mean, I could see a case where taxpayers would be irritated that they're paying the cost of a certain fire district because they're not, paying their share. How often do we review that cost, and how often do we update it based on past records or whatever?
Well, it's the cost that they pay is, I believe, controlled by state statute.
It is? Okay. I didn't.
What they can pay. Yeah, we do. We see a lot of workload, especially in East Side over there. I mean, that's a lot. Some of the other ones, Curran, Lake Springfield, South Oak Knolls, I mean, there's not that many calls there. We still are protecting them in all phases. I mean, we all hazards department when I say that. But we're kind of stuck on state statute on how much we can charge them.
Yeah, I wasn't sure of that. That's why I thought I'd ask.
Real quick, if I could interject, that's one note I put on to approach our legislative leaders, but it'd be helpful if the fire departments throughout the state lobby the legislature with regards to this issue, because it should be based on the operational cost of each municipality that covers it. And so if we're covering a fire district, the 9 of them, it should be a cost ratio across all 9 of them. It's real simple. It's a matter of mathematics. So I'd encourage all firefighters from throughout the state to lobby the legislators to make it happen.
And then, thanks, Mayor. And then the other thing, we've done a good job, I think, looking at the budget. I mean, we saved a little bit this year on higher back, excuse me. Is there steps that you put in to try to cut it back even more, or is that just what we're stuck with? I mean,
we've got some TAs in the contract that have done some adjustment, but we're pretty much is what it is, and it's controlled by our manning somewhat. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd be willing to show any of you 2 at a time, because that's about all I can handle, of a massive table that we run that correlates what the pool numbers are. That's the guys we have available per shift, taking all their different times out from a K day to if they use a vacation day to if they use a personal day, if they're sick, military time, training time, injury, all those things, and it's a giant table, and it runs down and it calculates how we do. That's how we can basically calculate what we need to run our department and keep our overtime in check.
No, I did notice. I mean, we're keeping it flat, which is is good, and I know last year it actually went down what the final estimate is, so that's good.
Well, we're working hard, and the guys are coming to work, and, we're doing well. We're working hard on keeping our injuries down. What you don't see is, though, is our military doubled. I mean, it is running high for how much they're deployed and how much they're going on drills. We have a lot of military guys. We attract them. They do well on our testing. It's doubled over the years.
Yeah.
It has a cost.
And then my last question is there any plans for any more remodeling of firehouses or anything like that this year? Do we have it in the budget for?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, that's part of those fixed costs that I showed you earlier. There's dollar amounts in there that we use to repair our houses.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Alderman Redpath?
Chief, I remember that we used to have a pretty good maintenance crew that handled the truck maintenances, and whenever we brought those in, and now we've moved to the garage. And obviously, I'm not a fan of the garage, but what's the difference in the cost from how you guys used to maintain your vehicles compared to that?
Originally, we had more people working in that garage, but if you compared costs now, if we had the 3 mechanics that we're working on and we were able to get our parts budget lines back a 5-year average, we'd be less.
I thought so.
How much less?
220,000
Over 3 years, or?
a year.
Thank you. On the fairgrounds contract, do they pay for the full entire unit out there, the station, the officers? How's that work?
We live in their building.
Right.
And they take care of it. And we pay the salaries of the guys that are there, and we provide the fire truck for them. I mean, that's all on us. They just give us a place to live.
So they don't pay us for fire service out there?
Well, that's part of the cost of that contract.
Okay.
Which we did renew this year. We've got the same price and a 5% increase for every year for the next 3 years from them.
Okay. What's the difference? We had 58.6% of our calls were EMS calls, and I know that we respond in the full rigs, but isn't there a smaller vehicle that we could use for that? I remember we used to have what they call, the Quints or something like that?
Squads. This has been beat around a long time, and I've been discussing it for a long time. And I think the easiest analogy is, if they were extra companies, it's a good idea. We have one downtown that we run when our manning permits us that we send. But otherwise, we just have so many locations, and we need to have these larger apparatus there that can handle any emergency. I don't make it any different than if you hire a carpenter to come to your house to build a pergola, and he shows up with a hammer and a screwdriver, and you go, hey, I need you to build a pergola. And he goes, well, I got a hammer and a screwdriver. You got anything I can do with that?
So while they're away, if a call comes in, they'd have to go back to the firehouse to get the big truck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's proven. It was a thought probably 5 or 6 years ago. It was the new fad in the fire service, and now you're seeing it coming out from all the different departments who tried to go to this and said it was a failure. It's no different than 15 years ago. The Quint was the big thing, which was basically a ladder with the pump on it also. That was the new fad, and East St. Louis went to it, and they got into it in about 3 years. They went, oh my God, it's a huge mistake because we can't afford the maintenance on these things because they tear themselves apart. You got to be careful of fads when it comes to the fire service because it costs you a lot of time, it costs you a lot of money to veer off course.
Chief, what are you guys doing on the fentanyl situation? I mean, I know that's a situation where it's pretty dangerous for you guys to go in, and I know that the police department's conducting training on how to respond to those situations. How are you guys doing that?
We're being very careful. I'll refer to Bob at what's going on. Our department safety officer is under him.
Yeah, our safety officers.
Please use a microphone. Thank you.
Here, I'm sorry.
Safety officers handle it pretty well, and through education and, of course, body substance isolation, gloves, trying not to make contact with it. And then, of course, an unfortunate event that you do is we carry some Narcan, but with fentanyl, that's probably not enough. We're going to have to call another apparatus or two to get a high enough dose of Narcan to.
How do you handle the situation? How do you cordon off the area, or how do you do that?
We leave the area, and we leave that to law enforcement to handle that from there. That becomes, in our opinion, that becomes a law enforcement issue.
Can you explain what that is, what you just explained?
The
Fentanyl?
Fentanyl?
Yes.
It's a very potent narcotic painkiller that's somehow making its way to the street in alarming amount, along with carfentanil, which is even much more powerful, like heroin. Then fentanyl is probably 15 times stronger, and then carfentanil is probably 100 times stronger than that.
And it's very deadly to the
A
officers.
couple grains of
responding. Yeah.
carfentanil will kill you.
It'll kill you in a minute. The training, when we do our training with our officers out there, do we house our officers out there, or are they come and go each day to train?
We run an academy, and we do not house them. They go back home at night. We have them from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening.
Okay. And Chief Richmond, the smoke detector thing was amazing. I mean, I didn't have it go out in my area. I know where you worked with some of the other places, but that was an outstanding operation you guys ran this year. I'm very pleased with that. So, how many positions are left, Chief, in the fire safety unit after they reduced the 3?
We'll have 3 inspectors, the public education officer, and the senior fire investigator. You know, I got to get this out, all right? Yeah, I know it's going to save money. But, you know, the old sentence was, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, okay? It's important. These things are important. We have a workload there, a heavy workload for what we're doing in our community. It makes a difference. I mean, other communities have fell behind on this, and there's examples across the country. And you guys probably aren't aware of them as much as we are. I mean, the last one was in Oakland, California. Ghost ship fire. Are you familiar with any of this? Okay. They had a warehouse. People were living in it because very expensive to live there. So they had them all squatting in there. I don't know, they were renting out areas. Wasn't inspected. Guys on the truck said, hey, you got to take a look at this. Got to take a look at this place. Didn't get done. Okay? Too much. 400,000 person town, 8 inspectors. Didn't happen. They had a fire. 38 people died. The firehouse, the closest firehouse, half a block away. These places where a lot of people live, you know, where we have big groups of people, have to be taken care of. Because if we don't do the prevention on it, if we don't make sure it's up to code, if we don't do these things, there's nothing we can do to save it. There's things all across, you know, that you look at all through history with us. And what's happening in Oakland now? They're tripling the number of inspectors they have. Because they weren't getting their work done. Because they couldn't get it done.
How many's left in there in the fire
3.
safety?
Plus a supervisor, right? 4 total?
He's a senior fire investigator, takes over for the investigations. Understand that this is part of those 5.5 bonus points we got for ISO. We got 4.77 of them. They put us over the top on this stuff.
I'm all done. Thank you.
Alderman Tyler?
Thank you. I'd like to go all the way back to the 1103 and 1104 lines, the temporary salaries and the overtime. And I had a couple different constituent calls that were questioning, you know, why is it that the fire department has such a high overtime amount? And over the years, in the 10 years that I've been here, you guys have done your best to get this under control. And I tried explaining that, like you said, there's Kelly days, you got your callbacks, you got your military, you got your sick, you got all these different things, and you have a state statute for minimum manning?
It's our contract. Our CBA has a minimum manning, 49, which puts 3 guys on every apparatus.
That, you know, basically if somebody's down at a house, you got to get another body in there to replace them.
Absolutely.
That's how I tried to explain it.
Yes.
And, you know, when we're looking at this, FY18 budgeted was very similar to the FY19 request, $1,081,000. And your estimated final for this year is looking to be just over $700,000. And then There's no description in here as to what the 7,560 on the temporary and the 10,000 request for the FY19 temporary is, but I'm assuming those are all tied together somehow.
No, the overtime is one line, and that includes the holidays that the guys are paid for. Okay, when they work a holiday, they make double time. That is part of that $1 million
So that doesn't
line.
go under regular salaries. Holiday pay comes out of that line item. as well.
Holiday pay comes out of that big line you're talking about. The temporary is a temporary gentleman that we have that helps our maintenance supervisor be able to maintain our houses. He can't do it by himself. Two guys are better than one. We hire him for $10 an hour. Works under our, no benefits. He's a great young man. We're giving a second chance, and he's been doing a great job for us.
Well, it sounds like that's a win-win there. Now, on the 1104, how much of the line is holiday pay?
I'd have to refer to OBM back there.
450,000.
So 450,000 of the 700 for your FY18 final was overtime, or was holiday pay, leaving your overtime at only about 250,000.
Yeah.
Which, and going back to, as you said earlier, if we go all the way back to the 2007, 2008 budgets that I was here for, we were looking at $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 of overtime.
1.6 million, I think, in 2010.
Yeah, and
that's
so-
from the administration, giving us the ability to hire guys and keep our manning up. Please come by. I'm open to show you. I call it our magic table and how this works. And that's all the credit goes to the administration for letting us to keep those numbers rolling along like they do. And timing is everything. Chief Winslow can hire 3 times a year. I got one shot. Basically, with the length of our training and how manning and people off and everything work, we need to hire. We have a small window. We look at it of August, basically end of August. We went a couple weeks late this year. We had some snags, and it was September 15th. It's going to put us a little late when we get them because they're in class 26 weeks. We've got some clinicals to get them through. They have to be on 10 shifts. That's part of the CBA before we can start counting them as our manning on the fire trucks. So it's probably a 7-month or more process to get them there. So it works out perfect for the way our manning runs. It runs in cycles with guys off because of their vacation. So we've got a set point when we always need to hire. And all thanks to the administration for listening to us, and that's why that number's down.
Thank you, Chief.
Alderman Turner?
I had a couple of questions. So on the slide with the workforce, it says that you have 12 minorities out of the 222. So is that, how does that break down with regard to firefighters and civilian employees?
11 of them are firefighters, 1 civilian.
One civilian, okay. So how does that compare to last year?
We seem to be that the average is for every class of 9 or 10, we have one.
One?
One minority in every class. It's been that way for how many years now, Bob? You always handled the classes? Last 4 or 5 classes?
So every year for the past 5 years, you've hired a minority fireman?
Yes.
Every time we've hired.
Every time we've hired.
There's,
Sometimes we haven't hired every year, but every time we've had a
oh,
class,
okay,
we've had
in the last,
one.
okay,
Yes.
so and you've had one in
Yes,
each one of
yes.
those classes. Okay, so what type of recruitment activities do you do?
Well, last year, we changed up how we did things. Before, you had to have the CPAT test done, which is a candidate physical aptitude test, before they could even take a written test. The last time we tested, we said, no, we're going to let you take a written test for free instead of having to spend $150 to do this CPAT. We had 600 people signed up for the test, 467. I'm just off the top of my head now. I don't have it written down. We had 467 take the test compared to 192 the testing period.
I was wondering
before.
how that worked out because I remember when you changed
Right,
that.
and I think we
thought that
tripled
was
it.
a really good move.
And we tripled the number of minorities that we had past that part. We tripled that number, which isn't it's not a stupendous number. I wish I had my notes from that. I think we had 50 minorities that were in that number.
No, but it was a significant move, and I applaud you for making that change last year. So the other thing, the other question I have is, I also applaud you for Chief Richmond for the project that he did with the smoke detectors in Ward. And I know that on the slide, it showed that the highest cost for service were in Wards 2, 3, and 5. And I know that that's where you concentrated with that project. And it was a significant project and a real joint effort, because it was American Red Cross, NAACP, a whole bunch of community volunteers that all came together to do this. And so I guess my question is, what else can we do along those lines? Because that was a real community engagement activity. It wasn't just the fire department, and it wasn't really a huge outlay of city funds. I mean, because the Red Cross bought the fire detectors, and the community volunteers actually went out and did the door-to-door, and it was basically Chief Richmond, his time that put this together. So what else can we do to engage the community to look at, affecting that number? Because I mean, the reality is that those are the older neighborhoods. They're the properties that are, aging. And when there is a fire, it is more likely that you have, a very high percentage of loss. So what else do you see that can happen along those lines?
Chris, I'll let you answer.
Sure. Sure. I will say that program continues. We've embedded it in the department as a permanent aspect of the Springfield Fire Department. We have ample grant funding, several thousand more smoke detectors that we could put in this year if we were able to get out into the neighborhood and partner with all of our community partners to do that. We have 8 census tracts within the city that are defined by regional planning and demographics as underserved populations, high percentage of minority, high percentage of low income. We have covered 3/4 of those 8 census tracts, and we've documented all of that. We know what remains to be done there. We want to get to those areas in 2018. And we will continue with the appointment-based model that covers the entire city. Anybody in the city of Springfield, anybody in the area that Springfield Fire Department covers, that 124 square miles, can call and make an appointment for the smoke detector program also. So it does, in fact, cover the entire city, but we are focused on those underserved populations with our program, and we have planned to continue that throughout this year and the next. And then eventually we're going to make long-term plans to circle back around, because we know we only hit a certain percentage those days that we're in the neighborhood. So we've also developed a door hanger program where if we have a dramatic fire situation here in town, we can cover that neighborhood in a very short time that day or the following day with door hangers where they can call neighbors around that area to receive our services as well.
Okay, thank you. And then I have just one last question. I was here when there was that push for the smaller vehicles for the EMS, and I think we bought 2, is it 3? Bought 3. So now that we've kind of moved away from that, what are we doing with those vehicles?
We're still running one of them as a squad company out of our downtown station when manning permits, because of the volume of calls that station goes. So it helps Engine 1 out. It takes about 600-700 calls a year off of them. But the other 2 we've repurposed as our command vehicles. Repurpose them, they need different ones, and repurpose those as our command vehicles for Battalion 1 and Battalion 2. They can haul a lot more equipment that's auxiliary to the scenes, and that's what we're using for now.
Okay, so we are actually using them,
Yes,
just not
yes.
for the purpose
Yes.
that they were. Well, and as I close, I do want to commend you, because I think that you really are taking the department in more of a community engagement area and focus, and I think that that's great. I know that the time that I have been here, I have been very critical of the fire department and the lack of what I perceived as outreach and trying to, and the lack of real recruitment efforts. So I do want to say that I appreciate the efforts that you have made, and I do see a slight change over the last couple of years. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's a group effort. Everybody's working extremely hard at doing their job the best they can. I mean, get back on the ISO thing. It's going to save some money for our commercial people here in this town. It's proven. Homeowners, regular homeowners, maybe. Depends on what insurance company you use. Get a bid on it. Commercial, we're looking at 3 to 5% less premiums are going to pay. If we did some rough calculating kind of with our EAVs and what's, the commercial property was worth. We talked to some people, insurance companies are traditionally very hard. They won't give you any information. We asked some people that we knew, what are you paying for your insurance? What do you have? And they told us, and we kind of did some back figuring, and we think we're in the $500,000 range, if not more, for commercial businesses in Springfield that are going to enjoy this ISO 1 rating. It makes a difference. Makes a huge difference to them financially. I mean, I think it makes our community look more attractive to business. I mean, that's what we're after, isn't it? Get more businesses in here, get more people here living here to grow our community. I think we're doing our part. I feel like we've really, and remember, we did this with no money. I mean, this was all sweat equity we did, and we got smart, and ISO helped us in a way that let us show how well we do our job instead of just the equipment we had. And we were able to prove what we do, document what we do. So I'm extremely proud of our department. These guys behind me and next to me, tremendous. The guys on the rigs, tremendous. The people in fire safety, tremendous job. It was a total group effort. And I can't say am I prouder than the intermediate life support and the pit crew CPR. That's life-changing stuff for this community. We've changed 11 extra people, 11 extra families in 1 year. We changed their whole family. Thank you for the time.
Chief,
Mr. Chair.
Before you go, yes, sir. Alderman.
Congratulations, Chief, on achieving that Class 1 rating that reflects significant effort and a high degree of professionalism by all concerned. And thank you for the handout and your presentation. Lots of good information on your handout. I have some questions about if we, in order to balance the budget, if we have to make cuts, and let's say, for example, just a what if or scenario, if we say we have to cut 10% of fire, and let's just for an example, it's 10% of the line 1102 line. I think the 1102 line is now set at 20 million. Let's say we have to cut 10%. I'd do $2 million.
$2 million?
Yeah. So as I understand the collective bargaining agreement, the shift minimum manning requirements are eliminated if there are layoffs. Is that correct?
It's a graduated scale down. I've presented some of those numbers to the administration to get to that point, 1.9 million, and that's not taking into account unemployment that we'd have to pay them for 6 months. I mean, that's some extreme calculations. But to get to that number, we have to reduce our minimum man. We have to basically lay 25 guys off and reduce our minimum manning to 43. We shut down 2 companies.
Okay, so let's talk about that. If you have to do, let's say, 25 layoffs, does management control the individual positions that are laid off?
Start at the bottom.
So it's based on seniority. You've got to start at the bottom.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now you've got a class in training now that goes almost 30 weeks almost with everything combined. And when did that training class begin?
September 15th. September 15th.
And when would their 30 weeks roughly be up? March
15th, but they've still got clinicals after that. OBM set to our budgetary where we could hold on to those 9 till they reached the end of May, which would get them past all their training and on shift and count their 10 days. So if that would happen, they could come back day one and work. Otherwise, if you do it, the 1st of March, we're going to cut right in the middle of their stuff, and basically we're going to miss out. They're not going to finish their training. But remember, that's 9. So you're going to add 16 more. You're going to get up to guys that have 2 years on, probably.
So if we have to do layoffs, I think what you're recommending is you wait for that training class to complete its training so that they are fully credentialed and they have the capability to come back to the force when an opening takes place.
Yes, that would be absolutely the right thing to do. We shut down. It's going to affect us. It's going to affect the people.
Okay, and so it's now. How many are non-union personnel in the fire?
7.
So 7 badge firefighters are non-union.
No, that's my civilian personnel. That's a clerk in fire safety, a clerk out in training, my office coordinator, fiscal officer who got moved now, so I guess I had 6 really. I didn't think of it that way. My maintenance guy.
Well, I'm asking a different question. The union contract only applies to those that are within the bargaining unit. So how many are firefighters that are not within the bargaining unit?
0.
Well, wait a minute.
It means how many white shirts?
White shirts.
Oh, white shirts. Oh, excuse us. I apologize. We're not in the bargaining unit. The six administrative.
The 6 here tonight are not subject to that.
We're not subject to that.
The rule that requires those with the least seniority to go first. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the last question on the green sheets.
Yes.
There's one job category called probationary firefighter first year, and is that the job description for those that are in training?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we've got 2 positions, 2.25 positions in that category for this coming year.
Yes.
So we're not going to do a class with 2.25, are we?
No, I might shift this to OBM, but that's keeping those kids working till the end of May. So you got 9 times 3 months. I'm gonna is Julie back there? She can explain it better than I can.
That's correct, Chief. That is the FTE value of the 9 people currently in class, funding them 1/4 of the year, or 0.25, and that's how we arrive at the 2.25.
We've also got 24 firefighters that are called firefighter. Now that's the category after you've completed your training, but you're not yet at firefighter second year. So do we truly have 24 firefighters that have completed the training but are less than 1 year seniority?
Oh, no. I don't think that's correct.
Okay.
That firefighter is 4 years. So you have the probationary, and then you move up into the.
Yeah, look below there. A firefighter is a 5-year guy that has 5 years or more on. Then you got a firefighter plus 10.
Okay, what follows probationary?
10, then you got second year, third year. Okay, that's their step raises after they're hired. They step up 10% a year.
Okay.
Okay, because they're hired at 70% of full pay.
What's the next level after probationary firefighter first year?
Second year.
Second year.
Second year.
And for
that's
second
the 10,
year?
That's class of 10.
So for them, we got 10 of those.
And 10 of the third year. You can see we've had 3 classes. We've ran along 3 classes.
For the second year, we pay them $60,500, and then for the third year, we pay them $67,000.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chief.
Alderman Redpath?
Alderman Director McCarty. Could you tell me the difference between what we paid into the police and fire pensions last year and what we paying in this next year? Is there a drop?
No, both pensions were adding about $700,000 in additional payments in the coming year.
So it's increasing both?
$1.4 million between the two.
Thank you.
Chief, are there any non-essential services that you all are providing that the city could do without? If we had to ask you to exclude something from what you all do that costs you as a department to us?
The easy answer is no, we don't. I mean, it all comes with the cost of running the department. I mean, it all falls on our divisions. We take care of everything. We don't have anything that's costing us extra money off to the side. We're all doing it with the people we have and what we pay them.
Appreciate it. As you know, fire department's near and dear to my heart because of my father. And before you go, I want you to answer, what high school did you graduate from?
That would be Southeast.
Thank you very much. Oh, Mayor Langfelder.
I'm glad you said that.
And you achieved in spite of that.
Well, as you can see, Alderman McMiniman hit the nail on the head, pointing out the difficulty in, not only this budget, but other budgets. And so, again, as a reminder, we cut $3 million. And so that's kind of a misnomer. We cut $3 million out of the budget. The departments cut 1.3. When it came to me, I cut an additional over $2 million. And one of the cuts, as mentioned, was 25 firefighters, and I wasn't going to do it. I know some aldermen said, oh, we'll close the fire station. I'm not going to do it. That's going to have to be a proposition coming from the council. What I thought would work, because the previous fire chief or ex-fire chief had done it, was bring down the number of inspectors to 3. So you have 4 individuals in fire safety. You split it out just like we used to do in public works. You had a quadrant, split the city in 4 parts, cover it that way. But these are tough times. Those are tough decisions. And the other one's a vacancy. So you have to pick and choose what's the best direction to take. One thing I will say on the apparatus, the chief brought it up. You compared it what it used to be in 2 years ago when we didn't have a centralized garage. Well, those equipment trucks are a lot older, so they're going to have a lot more breakdowns, and the expenses are going to be a lot higher than what they were. So you have to really compare apples to apples. Centralized services is the way to go with regards to that. And then the last thing is, I believe personally, I'm kind of prejudiced in that, we have a second to none fire department, and same with the police department. And the chief, I couldn't pick 2 better chiefs. They both, as was pointed out, the outreach efforts are above what they were previously. And the chief received, with his command staff and the firefighters, Class 1 classification, which hasn't been done, I think, I don't know how long ago. It's been ages.
Got it at 88. Lost it 2002.
So, that's due to no, increases. They really sharpened the pencil, looked out the outreach. I think the alarms had something to do with it, partnering with the community. And these are tough decisions we have to make. And so that's the reason I went the direction I had, because, you want to minimize the layoffs, and then you definitely don't want to close the fire station. If an alderman wants to close the fire station in their ward, please let us know.
Well, we wouldn't do it in our own ward.
Well, Chief, we appreciate all that the department does. We appreciate the A1 class fire rating that we have. I'm going to go see my insurance agent so I can get that discount. And we thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations, Chief, again on that, and to the command staff and the firefighters on the Class 1.
Is there any, you're free to go now if you'd like. Is there any public comment while they're leaving?
Good job.
If not, our next budget hearing will be on Wednesday, January 24th at 5:30. We'll have CWLP and Public Works,